family. Mark from Anaheim's on deck. We'll get to him momentarily. Let's wrap up with Cleveland Horton. Cleveland's the director of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, and they're having a big event on the 20th. And they're going to honor six Marylanders, six women Marylanders. So, Cleveland, give us the names and why you decided to pick these six women.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for that. We are recognizing six trailblazing women from Maryland, and those women are Speaker of the Maryland House of Delegates, Adrienne Jones; Barbara Samuels, recently retired from the ACLU of Maryland; Community Advocate Erica Bridgeford; the Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, Zainab Chowdhury; State Delegate Jocelyn Pena Melnick; and lifelong public servant Dr. Anita Turks Hunter. All these women have done tremendous work individually, and we wanted to make sure, again, from our agency perspective, that we're giving people their flowers while they're still here. And we wanted to take the opportunity during our gala to take a moment to recognize the lifelong works of these six trailblazing women during our gala, for everyone to celebrate them on Saturday, August the 20th, 2022, at Maryland Live Hotel and Casino.
All right, Cleveland, give us information. And folks who want tickets to go to that event, what do they do?
They can go to our website. Our website is mccr.maryland, and that's Maryland spelled out, .gov. And they can purchase tickets directly from our website. We still have a few tickets remaining. We'd love for some of your listeners to take advantage of those tickets and join us on Saturday, August the 20th, 2022 at Maryland Live Hotel and Casino.
All right, the keynote speaker again, Dr. Mary Frances Berry, and I said just to hear her speak is worth going to that event. Cleveland, thank you for all the information, and thank you, and hopefully you guys will have a great event.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. And again, if any of the listeners have any questions, they can feel free to reach out to the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. Our main number is 410-767-8600. I can also be reached directly at 410-767-8591.
All right, thanks, Cleveland. And I see when the boss gives you his personal number, folks. So if you consider that you've been discriminated, state of Maryland, you need to call up. Just reach out to Cleveland Horton. He gave you his number. Take advantage of it. So again, thank you, Cleveland. And thank you for the work that your agency does. All right, I think Cleveland's left us. All right, let's move on to Mark from Anaheim. Let me just tell you, folks, Mark is not his real name. He's really not from Anaheim, but during I think it was in the 90s, he crossed our radar. And Dick Gregory heard him on the radio, and Dick Gregory said, man, who's that brother? You know, I don't know who he is, but you better keep him close. He's a human early warning system. And having said that, everything that Mark has told us has come true. So sometimes it's a kind of bitter pill to swallow at times, but it's been truthful. Let me just give you a little bit of his background for those of new listeners who don't know who Mark from Anaheim is. Mark from Anaheim, as I mentioned, is not his real name. He's really not from Anaheim. He's a retired U.S. Marine Corps Reserve Mustang Field Grade Infantry officer, as well as a retired LAPD patrol supervisor. He's provided intelligence briefings and tactical training to various state and federal agencies. He has also briefed U.S. and NATO officials regarding the tactical applications of less than lethal weaponry. He's also served as a technical advisor for LAPD training films, as well as for films produced in Hollywood. Since retiring from the LAPD, he has returned to life, as he puts it, a lazy surfing beach bum, where he has coached and mentored some of the most successful female surfers in competitive surfing from around the world. He's also been featured in surf documentaries and surf-related publications, and many consider him the first ever Black surfer to hail from the state of South Carolina. And again, as I mentioned, Mark is not his real name, but on the air, Mark always was. He always gave us a heads up of what was going on, and that's why we had to use a different name on radio.
Just listening to my info guy.
Having said that,
so when
Mark,
people wonder where I'm getting my information from, here it is.
Well, it's 5 o'clock in the morning.
See, everybody that's doing in an office right now, and the police, he trained them all.
Like old days.
Like the old days. That's true, folks. But Mr. Nelson is alluding to the fact I began appearing with Mr. Nelson.
They call him a human warning machine.
1992.
That's why I knew about COVID 2 years before
Los Angeles.
It went down.
We used to come on from 4:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning out here. And Mr. Nelson, I have to ask, how are you doing?
We're doing well, sir.
They've been hanging since the 90s.
Happy belated
That's
birthday.
The link up there.
Thank you again.
I know you don't want the folks to know that, but hey, That's the only reason
he was
I
on
came back
yesterday.
on this show today is because it was your birthday, and you know, I owe it to the memory of Dick Gregory. So, before we get started, for those who've never heard me before, I don't want you to believe anything I tell you. I want you to do your own research, make up your own mind. But Mr. Nelson will attest to the fact that I've never come on any of his shows and provided misinformation, disinformation, or lies. So I'm going to start this morning by painting this picture, since we have like less than 3 months before the midterm election. Mr. Nelson, the U.S. empire has fallen, and the puppet masters are running out of ideas how to keep the masses distracted, as the atheists, the phony Christians, and the Luciferians seem to be reigning with impunity. Now, I just left the major surf contest, and now it seems to be commonplace for even professional surfers to throw up demonic hand signals after winning an event. You know, the same way this black quarterback did after throwing a touchdown pass in the U.S. Navy and U.S. Army football game. But hey, I challenge the listeners to name just one president during this 21st century who has not been photographed displaying some demonic hand signal. Now, as I said, Mr. Nelson, we're less than 3 months from the midterm election. And these are some of the things that are facing the United States right now. Number one, approximately 200 people are dying every day in this country from opioids. The vast majority of families in this nation right now do not even have $1,000 in the savings account. The number one killer of children in this nation is a firearm.
Damn.
Road rage is at an all-time high, and often that involves a firearm these days. And if you didn't notice, Mr. Nelson, going back to children, now picture this in your mind, Mr. Nelson, children between the ages of 10 and 12, there's been a 5-fold increase in suicide.
Damn.
Where these children have ingested something to willingly kill themselves. I'm talking children between the ages of 10 and 12. Since the year 2000, there's been a 5-fold increase in suicidal ingestion. When it comes to wrong way drivers on the freeway, since 2010, we've seen a 64% increase.
Damn.
And most of those are alcohol or drug related. Now you have corporations like Oracle, Netflix, Microsoft, and then this home mortgage company, Better. They're just a few of the major corporations who continue to lay off folks. In fact, last year, just to show you how distasteful Better was, for you folks who don't know who Better is, Better.com, they're the huge home mortgage company. On a Zoom call, they fired 900 employees.
Damn.
And already this year, they've already fired more than 3,000.
Shit.
While Biden is telling you how great the economy is and how great the job situation is. Hate crime continues to rise in this country. Meanwhile, morale within law enforcement, Mr. Nelson, within the law enforcement community, morale is at an all-time low. Now, this year has proven to be one of the hardest, if not the all-time hardest years on record. And lastly, because I know you always ask me about this, few argue that we are not closer to a nuclear war more than any other time since the U.S.-Soviet Union faced off in Cuba and Turkey during the John F. Kennedy administration. And even your so-called experts now, Mr. Nelson, who dismissed the idea of a civil war in this country, they are now publicly saying that an insurgency-type civil war appears to be on the horizon.
Hey, how long have I been saying this, Serenity?
Republicans on Capitol Hill. How do they deal with such issues? Well, one, they continue to cut taxes for the wealthy. They continue to increase taxes on what little remains of the middle class. They continue to eliminate programs which were designed to help the poorest citizens in this country, including U.S. Armed Forces veterans. And before I came on, I just heard a commercial pleading for doctors and dentists to help veterans because they can't afford decent medical and dental. How do Democrats and Republicans address these issues? Oh, they send billions of dollars to Ukraine. And, you know, as with the George W. Bush administration, already much of the money and weapon systems for Ukraine are unaccounted for. Now, CBS tried to do a story about that. I challenge the listeners to find that story because CBS erased that from their website just this past weekend. So that's what's going on in this country, Mr. Nelson. This nation has become so filthy that in 2016, the voters had to decide between an alleged Lolita Express frequent flyer and the wife of an alleged Lolita Express frequent flyer. So, you know, and by the way, both of them have been photographed displaying demonic hand signals too while they were on the campaign trail. So, you know, Brother Greg is going, I'm not going to speak for Brother Greg, but I think Baba Dick Greg would be saying, this is a filthy nation. And I want to know, Democrats, Republicans, and since this show comes out of the Washington, D.C. area, what are you all going to do?
What's up with you, Rob? Pay attention, baby. It's on. This is my information, man. I've been listening to him about 20 years.
Anybody, Mr. Nelson, that are addressing those issues, telling us what they're doing on Capitol Hill to solve the problems that are near and dear to our hearts?
The answer is no.
So, what I have decided today, I want the listeners, if you have a question that I can possibly address or direct you towards reading material or in film, I will gladly be here for you. I'm not here to argue with folks. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, then don't hear what I have to say. But Mr. Nelson will tell you, I'm brutally honest. I don't say things that I want you to hear. I say things only because that's just the way it is. I just lay it out there. I'm not here to make people feel good. I'm here to provide people with facts and information. So bring on the callers, Mr. Nelson.
All right. Before we take the first call, 12 after the top of the hour. Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan.
I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't even call it Taiwan. You know, I have friends who are native-born Taiwanese who now live in this country. Some of them are straight-A students who graduated from major universities in the country, and they have never even heard the name Formosa. So, I mean, you know, sometimes I talk about the dumbed-down U.S. population. I guess people are dumbed down all over around the world. It was Formosa before it was Taiwan. See, I went to Quantico High School outside of D.C. when Nixon was president. So I remember when the pandas came to Washington, D.C. Zoo, and I kicked myself because I could have been one of the first people to see those pandas at the zoo, and I never did. But I also remember when Nixon, you know, he cut deals. First of all, he took the U.S. off the gold standard, but he also cut deals to open the doors to China. And George Herbert Walker Bush at that time was his liaison in China. And so we, and when I say we, the United States, in deals with China, could no longer call Taiwan the People's Republic of China. And we definitely couldn't call them Formosa anymore. But at the same time, we provided financial and military aid to Taiwan as a buffer zone, I guess they want to call it. And what you see going on in Ukraine right now with Russia, there are a lot of people who are concerned that China's going to try to do the same thing now with Taiwan. And President Biden has already publicly expressed the fact that unlike putting boots on the ground in Ukraine, which is not true, by the way, we've had boots on the ground in Ukraine since Obama was president. In fact, less than a week before Russia actually invaded Ukraine, there were National Guard troops that were brought back home to the U.S. So you folks do your own research. We've had troops in Ukraine for nearly a decade, and we've been providing Ukraine with financial aid for nearly a decade. In fact, for you folks out there who may not realize this, that's why Donald Trump was impeached the first time around, because he basically held up the money that was already going to Ukraine that had already been agreed to by Congress.
Damn.
It's amazing how dumbed down this nation is. But anyway,
Damn.
When it comes to Taiwan, that whole thing with Nancy Pelosi, that's just to distract you. Congresspersons can go to other countries anytime they want. Now, Mr. Nelson, you just had the Republican Party, their conservative CPACs had their convention in Hungary, an autocratic country. I didn't see the media jump up and down about that. Where they, by the way, where they even came out with Orban, who said, we need to do a worldwide takeover of all governments. That's what they said. They came right out in Hungary saying, what you see me doing in Hungary, that's what the United States needs to have done, and that's what we need to do to the rest of the world. But they're going to sit here and talk about Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan? Please, folks, that's just a distraction. That's all it is, Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, but also the Hungarian leader spoke at was it AIPAC, the conservative group, recently?
CPAC, that's what I just said. They held a CPAC meeting in Hungary. Now, they just recently had another CPAC meeting where Donald Trump ended it, and they come right out and tell you they want a worldwide autocracy. Not a democracy, folks, an autocracy. A dictator.
NWO.
Basically, the Republican Party has been following the playbook out of Hungary for the last 4 years.
Ouch.
I'll give you a good example, Mr. Nelson. Now, when George W. Bush was president, one of the first things George W. Bush did was fire all the people that William Jefferson Clinton had appointed and put in his own people. Now, Trump took it a step further. There are certain people who
hold that thought right there. I'm sorry.
Coming up, so I'm going to hold up.
All right, cool. 16 after the top of the hour, folks. Mark from Anaheim. So just call up your friend and tell him that Mark's on the radio. You got a question, reach out to us at 800-450-7876. Your call's in 4 minutes on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore. In the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, with information is power.
A lot of people ain't going to hear information. They're going to do a lot of reading and searching of what they want to.
And good morning,
when you talk to somebody with boots on the ground that call people and they talk to people, live by aliens, you know what it is. Already. What's up, Rob? You hear me?
Well, what we were saying before the break, Mr. Nelson, was the fact that when President George W. Bush was president, one of the first things he did was basically get rid of all of William Jefferson Clinton appointees. I think he may have kept 2. That's it, seriously. And Trump has gone further, because what Trump did was he suspended, many government officials have what we would call civil service protection. And basically Trump suspended those civil service protections for certain positions, got rid of the individuals who had those positions, put his people in place that are loyal to him, not loyal to the U.S., folks, loyal to him, and then reinstated that civil service protection, which makes it even more difficult for Biden to get rid of them. But at the same time, Biden's not replacing Trump appointees. You can go back to the Reagan years. It was common since Reagan was president. It was a commonplace thing for a new president, newly elected president, to replace deputy U.S. attorneys. Because, while people are now trying to claim that the Justice Department is politicized, it's always been politicized. And you want to have people in there who are not going to impede the campaign promises that you made when you were running for office. So, as long as Biden allows these Trump appointees to remain in office, not much is going to change. And I don't see him really replacing many of Trump's appointees. And you also have people who've been inserted or embedded, for a better term, within various government agencies who their job is to go in and usurp the efforts of the Biden administration because they're loyal to Donald Trump. And that's what you have going on, Mr. Nelson.
Uh-oh.
Does that include the guy who's running the post office? They claim they're trying to get rid of him?
You mean the postmaster who said you can't transport mail by airplane? It has to be done by transportation on the highway, and he just happens to own a trucking company? No conflict of interest there. It's a little bit more complicated with that individual, Mr. Nelson, because actually the president individually can't just come in and replace the postmaster because there's a board. So normally what happens with a president, they appoint people to the board. And when they have enough people on that board that president has appointed, then those individuals might make a decision on replacing a postmaster based on the presidential administration's suggestions. But no, President Biden doesn't have the power just to come in and get rid of the postmaster right now.
You know what I'm struggling with? That Donald Trump had the ability to do all of this, including Supreme Court justices, people who are loyal to him. Is there somebody behind him? Is he that smart to checkmate all the moves now that he's out of office?
Well, one of the things I said to your listeners on this show before.
Hold on the commercial. I get this message.
People love to talk about Epstein and whether Epstein committed suicide or whether he's alive and living on some island somewhere. They never talk about what happened to all the evidence that was retrieved from Epstein's residence when he was arrested. And I told your listeners, see, Ghislaine, I've known about Ghislaine for years. I was big into sailing, and I was on my college's sailing club and stuff. And back in those days, Ted Turner and Robert Maxwell were my two favorite sailors. And Robert Maxwell did an interview in Playboy magazine, and 2 weeks later he's dead, falling off his sailboat named Ghislaine. So I mean, I've known about Ghislaine for years.
Ow.
And basically, well, I gotta be careful how I say this on the radio. Basically, Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein, as well as Maxwell, have been working for various intelligence agencies for years. And I couldn't believe some of the stuff that Maxwell said in that Playboy interview, because that probably led to him so-called accidentally falling off the back of a sailboat. But if I wanted to have international deals with certain countries, I have to figure out what can I do to make them happy so they'd be more accommodating. I'll give you a good example, Mr. Nelson. Back in the days when Kennedy was president, the U.S. was trying to figure out a way to become closer to Sukarno, who was the leader of Indonesia. And so, basically they went to Sukarno and asked him, what could the U.S. provide you that would make you more amenable to us? Well, he always wanted to sleep with Marilyn Monroe. So the U.S. government went to Marilyn Monroe and asked her if she would be willing to do that, and she said, hell no. So what they did is they went to LAPD, and at that time, LAPD had the largest porno collection on the planet, since so many of the porno movies are made out here in the Valley.
Dang.
But they went to LAPD, went through various porno tapes until they could put together a tape of a woman who resembled Marilyn Monroe. And then they found a guy who closely resembled Sukarno, and they tried to use that as a propaganda to bring Sukarno down. It didn't work. But what I'm saying to you is now you bring it to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. You have leaders around the world who come to this country. Many of them come from autocratic Muslim countries, where back home they would pretend to be all Muslim and stuff. But when they come over here, the first thing they want to do is sleep with some little 14-year-old blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl.
Ouch.
Well, Ghislaine and Epstein, facilitated that, but at the same time, we're secretly videotaping them. So later on, would you rather us go to war with one of those countries, or would you rather us present this leader with this videotape that would be very damning back in his country, and that person is more likely to go along with the plans of the United States? What I'm saying to you, Mr. Nelson, they didn't just have videotapes on foreign leaders. They got videotapes on a lot of people on Capitol Hill right now.
Ouch.
Now, who was president when Epstein was arrested?
Donald Trump.
Yep. Trump?
And the FBI was working for what president then?
Donald Trump.
So I'm telling you, folks, whoever's got Epstein's evidence will be running Capitol Hill for a long time.
Oh, my God.
And remember this.
Hold that thought right there.
We got another break coming up. I'm sorry. We got another break.
Another break. You just mentioned something about Epstein's tapes and Donald Trump and the feds. Is this connected to the raid on Trump's home in Florida?
I'm not going to discuss that, but I will say this to you. Before Trump became president, Mr. Nelson, what was he involved in?
What was he involved in? Casinos.
Casino.
Okay.
So you got people, and not just casinos in the U.S., casinos outside the U.S.
Yes.
You don't think we have elected officials who went to those casinos? You don't think Donald Trump has videotapes on those elected officials with little boys, little girls, somebody other than his or her spouse?
I'll be a monkey's uncle.
Yep.
That's why you don't see them going up against Trump, because Trump's got the dirt on these folks.
Oh, my
Gambling's
goodness. So
the
that
number
what
one
all this
addiction in
about.
country.
That what all this about.
Supreme Court. You mentioned the Supreme Court and how Trump appointed these folks. You got a guy on the Supreme Court who's a compulsive gambler, and now they're calling him to checks in on him. It's a filthy country, Mr. Nelson. You're being led. Well, this country is being led by people who everybody's got dirt on them, and they're not going to. They want to maintain that power and prestige and stay where they are. They don't want that dirt coming out on them. We used to have like the scandals back with the pages, for you folks out there who are too young to remember. Back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, there was a big scandal, sex scandals with pages on Capitol Hill, Democrats and Republicans. So it's a filthy. D.C. is a district of criminals, Mr. Nelson.
District of criminals.
D.C. Now, I know there's some people listening to the show who are from D.C., so you know what I'm saying. For those who don't know, K Street. See, I used to be a member of many of the globalist organizations that are running things. And when I saw what was going on, I dropped out. I didn't sell my soul to become one of these big famous people on Capitol Hill. And that's when I started coming on your show telling you people what their real agenda was. I knew because I was a member of many of these organizations on K Street. You got the globalist organizations, you got the lobbyists on K Street. They run DC, Mr. Nelson. They've got the politicians in their pockets. And it's so expensive to run for office today, you have to get campaign donations. Well, Donald Trump, the best statement ever said in the 2016 presidential campaign, Donald Trump in his first debate. You see all these people on the stage? I've given them all money. That way, regardless who gets elected, when I need a favor, I can come to that person. And then he even went so far, like Hillary Clinton. I invited her to my wedding.
Three times.
Of course, she and Bill showed up because I gave her money too. You folks go back and check that quote and see if I'm lying to you. That's why Donald Trump was a threat. Donald Trump kept his mouth shut. He'd still be president. He's telling people too much on how DC really operates.
Hey, Mama Jim.
And look, I'm no fan of Donald Trump. Okay?
That's why he gonna run again.
Instead of telling you he's peeing on, instead of telling
He don't
you
have
that
to.
It's raining, he tells you he's peeing on your leg.
Didn't you hear what he
That's the
said?
difference between Donald Trump and the other guys who are in office. Seriously. I know I'm being a little flippant here, but I'm just calling it the way it is, folks. That's Washington, D.C. Always has been. There's no Mr. Smith. There's no Mr. Smith going to Washington.
That's a reality check right there. 27 away from the top there. Michelle's in D.C. on line 2. Michelle, you have a question for Mark?
Yes. Thank you for taking my call, Carl. Mark, I wanted to know if you had any intel or any backstory on the Jalen Walker case, because it just seems to me that the story just sort of kind of quietly faded away from the news cycles. And I feel that we never really got the full story of what happened to this young brother. And there were, at one point, there was stories floating around that he had actually been in handcuffs when some of those bullets were fired. And so I know that attorney Ben Crump is on the case, and no shade to attorney Ben Crump, but all that says to me is that his family is going to get a monetary settlement. But I mean, I just want to know, is there anything going on in the Justice Department as far as investigating this any further, or what was the real story? I guess that's my main question, and I'll hang up and live.
Hang on, sis, before you hang up, what story have you heard?
Well, hold it. Both of you hold that thought right there, because we're going to take a short break so our station get caught up on the news, traffic, and weather today.
Let me take a break, too.
26 away from the top there. Mark from Anaheim. Michelle is called from Washington, D.C. to talk about the Jalen Walker case. Folks, you too can join this conversation. Reach out to 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls in 4 minutes on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
All right. What's up with you, Rob?
Man, I can't call it. Chilling.
All righty. I'm on 2 platforms, man. So hold on. Let's listen to these messages I got on this other.
All right.
My sister, baby, Technical T. She got 3 of them.
Hello, Mr. Chris, Miss Serenity, and Mr. Mike. And it's so sad because me and my husband, we both know these things. We studied this stuff. But you know what? It's not going to change the way they have colored folks viewing him with biasness and racistness and things. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I just look at a lot of colored folks voted Democrat anyway. So, I mean, at the end of the day, people just need to study and learn the word. And I started, how I found out is reading Isaiah, learning about King Cyrus. So I started seeing that spirit line up in Donald Trump. So I knew Donald Trump was going to be the president. And then when you put Trump and Pence together, you get Trumpins. And that's what he did. He blew his horn. He used his mouth to expose the things that were going on in these high elite places. And whether he part of it or not, he still exposed it and shared it to those who need to know so they can plan for their future. Seriously.
Did he? He ain't throw nobody under the bus because he still got the pictures. What's up, Julie?
Mm-hmm.
He still got the pictures, don't he, man? Ain't that now that don't that make sense though? When he said that, is that why they raided it? Carl smart. Remember Carl asked him. Carl said, "Is that why they raided Trump?" He said, "I ain't gonna answer that." Just know that it's some tapes. Might be in the cloud, Carl. Rob. What if he got that hidden in the cloud? Cause you know they got the cloud nowadays, huh? I wonder if he got it on millimeter tape or VHS tape and in the cloud. If he had, oh man, it'd be going down. Boy, that boy Donald Trump smart, ain't
he got it. He got it on some motion. Thought about.
Yeah, he ain't no. He's selfish as hell. So you can't trust that. But golly, he the devil that you can see. Should have kept him right there in place, man. Huh?
He gonna make sure he's straight.
Already. He thought about that before he ran.
Yeah,
he
already told them fools that they was gonna vote for him. He gonna win.
Already. He said anybody that what he say? Anybody that vote for me that's on this stage, I gave him money. Man, he been playing the game for a long time. They didn't see this con.
No.
Now, are we still gonna call this man a dummy and say he's stupid? He don't know nothing. This man, boy, he got game. Let's see what they ask Mark. Hold on, man.
Good morning again, family. 20 minutes away from the top of the hour. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. As most of you know, Mark's not his real name. He's really not from Anaheim. We're speaking with Michelle in D.C. We'll get back to in a moment. Let me just remind you that tomorrow is Friday, of course, and it's when we give you a chance to free your mind. Think for yourself and join us for another Open Phone Friday program. We start promptly at 6 right here on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore, and the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Let's go back to Mark and Michelle. So, Mark, I think you were asking Michelle a question.
I was asking Michelle, what has she actually heard about it? Because she's saying that she's hearing conflicting, but I don't know what that means. What does she know about the case?
Well, I think that's just it. I feel like we never really got the full story of what happened because it seems to me that the media was just so kind of quick to sort of tiptoe away from the story. And it's almost like it seems like they kind of want for the next incident to happen so that we'll just sort of forget about it and just move on to the next case. So I just feel like there was. It's like it's all little puzzle pieces, and there's not enough information about what has happened or what is going on to go forward in this case.
What I'm asking you is, what did you hear regarding the shooting itself?
Oh, okay. So that there were at least 6 officers that fired a total of 90 bullets, 660, I believe, which hit the young brother, and the incident ensued over an alleged traffic violation. So at some point there was a police chase, and the incident took place from there with I guess the police confronting him is what I'm saying.
Okay, so sadly in this country, excuse me, we have officer-involved shootings every day in this country. You don't hear about them.
Now, let me tell you why his information and what he about to tell you very powerful. Just between me and everybody paying attention. He trained them. They sent him to Nazi Germany to learn how to do the things that the police, the way they act today. He trained them. Pay attention.
Unless the media chooses to use that to elicit emotions within the community. Now, this is not on the same level, but I'll give you a good example of what I'm talking about. There was a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed female who sat in a jail here in L.A. for 2 weeks. Now, she got stopped at LAX. TSA called LAPD. They claimed she had a warrant. She goes, "That's not me. I've never even been to that state. And she sat in jail for 2 weeks. She's filing a lawsuit now. Now, the reason I'm mentioning her, I posted, I run law enforcement Facebook sites, including law enforcement sites you can't get into unless you're law enforcement.
Oh, really?
And when I posted that story, I said, you know why none of you heard this story? Because she wasn't black. If she had been black, they would be using that to, once again, because they want a civil war in this country. So you're going to find stories that can elicit this response. Because the way the media frenzy initially started the story.
Let me pause. They want us to be involved in that civil war. We don't have a dog in that fight. This is not our fight. Okay? This is not our fight. Like, and he hopefully he'll explain. Let's see.
Michelle, was how many times the brother was shot. Okay? The reason the media backed away from that story is because the officers, while pursuing that individual, heard what they thought was a gunshot and saw what they thought was a muzzle flash emitted from his car vehicle. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did hear that part.
And later on, when the car stopped and they gave him commands, he did not comply with the commands, and he returned back to the vehicle where they thought he had a firearm. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And they found a firearm in that vehicle
So
later.
did.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
No, I am not.
But the clip wasn't in
And
there.
this is what I'm talking about. So I wasn't there. Now, the large number of rounds shot, that's what we call contagion fire. And sadly, a lot of times contagion fire is based on error. For example, let's say, I got to be careful on this too, because it could be liability. There was a situation where officers were doing as they were trained. And there was a person who had a pistol in the front waistband. And the officers had already told this individual, keep your hands up. Don't go for the weapon. A supervisor arrives at the scene and decides to take over the situation. And the first thing the supervisor told the person with the firearm, take the gun out of your waistband. Well, now the individual took the gun out of the waistband, and guess what the officers did? They fired because they had told the person not to touch the gun. What I'm saying to you, unfortunately, many times when there's a shooting situation, it's because of police officers are humans and they make mistakes.
Mm.
And sometimes when an officer sees what she or he perceives as a threat, they may fire on the situation. The other officers don't even see what that officer saw or thought he or she saw, but they're assuming, well, that officer had a good reason to fire, and then they fire too. That's what's called contagion fire. That's why you had the large number of rounds. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that's what it's called, contagion fire. But if, in fact, those officers saw a muzzle flash from a firearm being fired from that individual's vehicle while they were in vehicle pursuit, it's understandable why you would think deadly force was warranted once this person didn't comply with the commands and now return to a vehicle to possibly obtain that weapon. I wasn't there. I'm not going to judge those officers negatively or positively, but I'm just saying, when they look at the totality of the situation and what was in the officer's mind at the time, I'll just tell you folks right now, don't expect to see any convictions on that. Not criminally, maybe civilly, but not criminally. And I will also tell you, I thought it was a little presumptuous of the city leaders to put that videotape out there so quickly and to go ahead and suspend those officers, because those officers are probably going to have a lawsuit against the city. It's going to be a lose-lose for everybody all the way around. But I'm glad I had a chance to ask, Mr. Nelson, to ask Michelle, because as you can see, there were certain things about that I told her that she was not aware of. What I'm saying,
That's right.
There are things about that case already. The media is like, well, we can't use this the way we want to stir up the pot to cause a civil war. So let's move on to the next one.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. 12 away from the top of the hour. 800-450-7876. Go ahead.
Before we go on, now Michelle asked that question because Michelle knows a little bit more about my background than most people probably listen to the show. If you're not aware of this, I helped the state of California write the book on police tactics. I also helped the U.S. Armed Forces write the book on police tactics. Even though I've been retired from LAPD now since 2008, I still have chiefs and sheriffs, attorneys, district attorneys who still secretly reach out to me and ask me for my professional opinion. Unlike some people who come on these radio shows calling themselves experts, I don't know what the hell they're experts. Just because they wore a uniform does not make somebody an expert. I taught at the LAPD Academy for 10 years. I have trained thousands of law enforcement police officers when it comes to the shooting policy, when it comes to police tactics. And even though I've been offered many times, I just refuse to appear in court as an expert in those matters because that's not what I want to do now that I'm retired. So I'm not coming on this show today giving my opinion as if I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Trust me, folks, I know what the hell I'm talking about.
All right. 10 away from the top of the hour. 800-450-7876. Anthony's in Buffalo. He's got a question for you. He's on line 3. Anthony, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Carol. Mark, is there any doubt in your mind that the that the Republicans aren't going to take back the House, the Senate, the House, the Senate, and the presidency? Every day I see more and more Democrats just upset, even about this new quote unquote this Inflation Reduction Act. With these IRS workers, 87,000 of them. And from what I've researched, that's just to comb through like the small businesses who use like Zelle and Cash App. But can I have your thoughts on that? Oh, and the last thing is, as far as Trump, do you see a Trump and DeSantis? Do you see them running on the same card? Thank you.
Okay, to address this first question, it goes back to my introduction this morning. I laid out 10 examples of things that are going on in this country, and neither the Democrats or Republicans are addressing those things. And see, the sad thing is, it doesn't really matter. Most people will blame the person who happens to be in office at the time for their problems. It's just like a lot of folks who come here from other countries, they're loyal to a party because that party was in office when they were allowed to come to this country. So there are a lot of unhappy people in this country. There are a lot of people who voted for Biden and Harris who don't feel that Biden and Harris have performed. Now, I will say Biden's rating, Ms. Nelson, you didn't notice, woo! Biden's got a 40% approval rating now. 40%. And once again, he only has like 12% of Republicans' approval from those who have been surveyed and polled. So folks are not happy with Biden. As far as the midterm elections, I would not presume that the Republican Party will necessarily take back the House. A lot of people have made that assumption already. However, in light of the Supreme Court ruling on a Mississippi case, because folks, it wasn't about Roe versus Wade. It was about a case in Mississippi giving the authority back to the states. Now, of course, it's related to abortion, so everybody just makes it a sweeping thing about Roe versus Wade, but it's more about states' rights versus federal government rights. And already we saw in Kansas where there's been a negative backlash as far as the red state is concerned, because Kansas may be a red state, but Kansas is not really a red state. It's more of a purple state if people really analyze Kansas. There are lots of pockets within Kansas that do not go along with the far right, because it's not even the Republican Party anymore. It's basically a John Birch Society Libertarian Party. And a lot of Republicans are trying to figure out how can they retake their party. But hey, sorry, the damage is done. That genie's out of the bottle, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. But if any indication, especially with the 10-year-old child who had to go to Indiana to get an abortion, I think a lot of people are starting to wake up. Now, mind you, Mr. Nelson, I told your listeners about this when when Trump and Pence were running. I tried to warn people, especially cops. Pence is from Indiana, the state that passed a law telling the citizens that they believed that their constitutional rights were violated, they could shoot cops. Most people in this country are around the third grade reading level, but suddenly they're experts on the Constitution. Pence, the same guy who, even though the majority of the people in the state did not want gambling, he legalized gambling. Pence, the guy who says, even if your daughter was raped or the victim of incest, it doesn't matter because God intended for her to be pregnant.
Oh, man.
But now people want to tell Pence is some hero because he didn't sign he didn't go along with Trump to basically steal the election from Biden. What I'm saying to you is, right now, I would not tell anybody that the Republicans are going to take back the House, but I also wouldn't tell them that the Republicans don't stand a good chance of taking the House. As far as the Trump DeSantis ticket, I don't see that happening. I had a friend who came out here to visit. Well, he was out here with his son in San Diego, and I took him down to Coronado to
hold that story right there, Mark. We got to take a short break. It's 6 away from the top of the hour, so our stations can identify themselves down the line. Folks, you want to speak to Mark from Anaheim, reach out to us. 800-450-7876 will get you in. Your calls next in 4 minutes right here on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore. Also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Hold on.
I find it really fascinating that the caller on this radio show is so
I want to know
succinctly,
what he thinks about reparations.
very descriptively describing
Hold on, Rob.
the training that these officers are given, and even he said himself that it's due to training that they are in the situation that they're in, and in a category of contagion firing, which that term in and of itself it suggests that the officers are put in a state of mindless tactics following and
already
are
muscle
trained not to use common sense,
but muscle control.
Very high stress situations. They're trained a certain way, and they're trained by experts like him, and yet the outcome of his training.
Yeah, because that's what they was taught to tell before they knew the gig. He's telling you what to look for. He ain't gonna hold nothing back. He ain't gonna say he wasn't part of it. Like he said, he just wasn't really willing to sell his soul. But at the time, what he was training wasn't what he thought it was. You gotta understand, this man had a long career. It just didn't start. He old. Hold on. Rob, what you say, reparations?
Oh, yeah.
What'd he say about reparations? I'm gonna have to find one. I'm gonna have to find one and send it to you, because see, we talked about that a couple of years ago. Somebody might ask the question. Let's see. But talked about that years ago. That's why I was telling you, it's gonna be hard when you trying to claim something and you part of the foundation. When you're trying to claim it under your Social Security. Because that's a false identification. That's not you. You get what I'm coming from with that? I had to explain that later, but hold on.
And good morning once again, family. A minute after the top of the hour, Mark from Anaheim is our guest. As most of you know, Mark is not his real name. He's not really not from Anaheim, but Dick Gregory described him as a human early warning human early warning system, something like that, because everything he's told us has come true. And if he doesn't know, he'll say he doesn't know. That's one of the good things about Mark from Anaheim. Anyway, 800-450-7876. You got a question before we let Anthony in Buffalo had a question. You were responding to Anthony's question, Mark, so I'm going to let you finish up.
You know, it's funny, Mr. Null, you talk about that human early warning system. See, I consider it a curse. A lot of people consider it a gift. And as you know, I have been keeping a low profile, and I haven't really been coming on your show and you had to beg and plead me to even come on today. But, you know, I just left a major surf contest. I go to surf contests to get away from all this international political drama. I couldn't even get away from it at the surf contest. In fact, on the last day of the contest, a guy, he's actually a famous drummer in a lot of bands, and he said, I'm going to start charging admission up here on the Huntington Beach Pier because of all the people who are coming up on the pier just to come over to ask me questions about what I see happening. I'm not making this up, folks. I'm not saying this to be some, you know, I'm just telling you the way it is. I couldn't even go to a surf contest and get away from the drama. There was one guy, he drove from Oceanside on 2 separate days just to come up there. He's a Trumpster, just to come up there and argue with me. I don't even know this guy. That's what I had to deal with for the last 2 weeks at a surf contest. I go to a surf contest to get away from this stuff, and there are people out there who apparently read what I write or listen to your show, Mr. Nelson, and they're all coming up there on the pier to hear what I have to say. So, you know, I'm gonna go in isolation, man, because I can't even have any peace at a surf contest anymore. But to get back to Anthony's question, the second part of Anthony's question was, do I see a Trump DeSantis ticket? I don't see that. Trump is too vain, and the last thing Trump wants is Pence was the perfect vice president because he's not going to ever step into the limelight. He would give Trump all the attention, and that's how Trump has to have it. But more importantly, folks, about 4 years ago, I had a friend from college who was out here in California. So I took him down to the Naval Amphibious Base, Coronado, where the Navy SEALs train. And we were on the restricted beach down there where they were training, and there was this woman walking down the beach. And I said, hey, you see that woman right there? You know who she reminds me of? And of course he said, no. Well, you and I both went to the College of Charleston. That woman reminds me of somebody else who graduated from the College of Charleston, and she happens to be married to Governor DeSantis. And I said, you don't know this, but DeSantis used to be stationed right here at this Naval Amphibious Base. So for you folks who don't know, now, in the past, I used to come on Mr. Nelson's show and tell him how Ted Cruz was the most dangerous person in this country. Because he's not a politician. He's an ideologue. There's a big difference. These folks really believe what they say. Well, Ted Cruz, in my book now, has been replaced by DeSantis. DeSantis is a Navy officer who has graduated from both Harvard and Yale. He's no dummy, folks. DeSantis is a guy who's defended Navy SEALs and other Spec Op members, Special Operations, who were allegedly guilty of committing war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. So he already has the backing and loyalty of the Special Operations community. DeSantis right now as governor is creating his own private militia down in Florida. You know, Mr. Nelson, Hitler had his own private militia too, right? Folks, trust me when I tell you this. Now, DeSantis' wife, who went to my college, has unbelievable connections within the media world. I'm telling you, folks, everything I'm telling you, folks, by the way, I posted on Facebook more than 4 years ago. So I'm not one of these people, Johnny come late, like some folks now are claiming it. I've been telling folks for more than 4 years. The guy to watch in 2024 is DeSantis. That's who the Republican Party. See, they wanted Petraeus. For you folks who don't know this, David Petraeus would have been the first Army general since Eisenhower who would have gotten the Republican nomination had he gone along with the coup attempt against Barack Obama. But Petraeus did the right thing, went to Obama, told Obama the whole plan, because that's what Benghazi was all about. Yep. You folks really believe Benghazi happened on 9/11/2012 by coincidence? Wake up, folks. Very little in U.S. politics happens by accident. Well, Benghazi didn't work. Petraeus went and told Obama the whole thing. Petraeus was not fired by Obama. He resigned to go back and clean up his marriage because he was an idiot. He didn't realize the woman helping him to write his book was sent to be close to him. She was a honeypot. She was Army intelligence. And he was stupid and had an affair with her. So when Petraeus didn't go along with the Republicans to take down Obama, then that's when all the information came out about him having an extramarital affair. They always got dirt on you folks. So coming back up to DeSantis is very educated. He knows the law, folks, and he knows constitutional law. He's a Harvard-trained, Yale-trained, and his wife has major ties in the media industry. That's the guy to watch in 2024. And there will be no Trump DeSantis ticket.
So who do the Democrats run then, Mark?
Exactly. Now, see, it's funny Anthony's asking this. I wish I was making this up, but I'll never lie to you. That guy who drove up from Oceanside, the conversation I'm having right now is almost identical conversation I had with him. And I said, the Democratic Party hasn't even groomed anybody to take Biden's place.
Oh, man.
Harris can't win. And so the guy keeps pushing me. Well, who do you think they're going to run? Who are you going to? I said, well, the only person they could possibly run is Newsom from California. He's already running ads in Florida, even though he's saying he's not running. And then I said, but who the hell knows Newsom outside of California? Folks, I'm not making this up. Some old white man sitting up there on the pier all of a sudden jumps into the conversation. Now, we're not talking to him. I don't know him. Well, I know about Newsom, and I'm from Houston, Texas. And I didn't bother saying to the guy, but you're in California right now. So I asked the guy, okay, so you know about Newsom. How do you know about Newsom? Because I read. I go, well, the average newspaper in this country is written on a third grade reading level, and most people don't read newspapers. You have a TV show called Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? So you think that everybody reads the way you do? Now, I'm sure that guy didn't just happen to be on the pier. Because that's what they do. They send folks to pick to see where I'm going. But there is nobody the Democratic Party even has right now that can run. And I said this
run Bernie.
Anthony, we're going to let you go because we got a bunch of folks got questions. I want one of the other folks to get a shot as well. But I thank you for your call.
I was wondering why he won't run Bernie.
Right.
Thank you.
I can understand what he said, Mr. Allen. Run who?
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He's an independent. When he runs for Senate back in his state, he doesn't run as a Democratic. He's the closest thing to a libertarian. In fact, I told your listeners on this show, Mr. Nelson, more than 4 years ago, Bernie said, if you look at the libertarians and you look at the so-called progressives, there's not much difference between them. And where did Bernie Sanders start his campaign? Liberty University. You check out and see what kind of school Liberty University is. Bernie, please. Bernie Sanders is not even a Democratic. He runs as a Democratic.
Thanks, Anthony. 10 after the top here.
He only runs as a Democratic when he's running for president. When he's back in his state, he's a progressive and an independent.
Thank you for clarifying that for us. 800-450-7876. Wes is in the ATL. Wes, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, Uhuru Kwesi and Mark. Hey, 1957, good year, man. Hey, look here. It's a story gonna break about South Carolina, man. But hey, look here, my brother. For the people that's newbies, I like the thing you said. When we think we taking down the system, we propping up the system. I love it.
When you think you're fighting the system, many times, if not most, you're doing exactly what the system wants you to do.
Yes, sir. So I've been thinking, man. I got an idea. The two things that we could do right now to avoid the Civil War and take down the system. Well, I'll give you my two answers now. Number one is do like China do. Nobody pay no mortgages. Nobody. Like black, white, that'll bring people together. And also, I talked to a judge. The judge told me, the police stop you. Don't run in front of the police. But when you get to court, don't plead guilty. Don't take no plea. We'll shut the just ICE system down, man, and the mortgage system. Just with them two things alone, man. What you think about that? Kuwaiti too. I want you to hear your answer too, man.
All right, let's give Mark a chance to respond. Thanks, Wes.
I would tell you something, Mr. Nelson. You know what? Actually, what Wes is saying would shut the system down because with COVID and everything else going on, they don't have the personnel to man the courts. And as far as paying your mortgage, I'm not going to tell you not to pay your mortgage. What I will tell you is, do you think it's any coincidence that all of a sudden Biden now is trying to hire a whole bunch of IRS folks? They're not going after the wealthy folks. They're going to come after us. They always come after the middle class and the lower classes. They have plenty of time to audit us. I wrote a check to IRS, Mr. Nelson, and based on my tax providers, doing my taxes. and there was an error. I got a letter from IRS 2 weeks later telling me how much money I owed them. They had no problem telling me that there was an error on my taxes. Now, with the IRS, going back to the George W. Bush administration, when 9/11 happened, people who in the FBI normally investigated corporate crime, they were all taken off because everything was about the global war on terrorism. So you have corporations today that are committing crimes with impunity. And even Biden, nobody will, they will let you go after them civilly, but they don't let you go after them criminally, even though they say that a corporation is a person. Now, they don't have a problem, you know, we as individuals being charged with a crime, but you don't see them going after, well, you know, I talked about the opioids earlier. Mr. Nelson, you know how many thousands of people in this country have died? And going back to DeSantis, now DeSantis is not to blame because there was another governor before DeSantis that was just the worst when it came to corruption. But DeSantis was also governor when they facilitated. If folks don't know this, Florida was the #1 state for the problems with opioid in this country because they would send the drugs to Florida. Prescriptions were written down in Florida that were used in states around the country. Florida's #1 problem for the opioids. Now, there are going to be a lot of lawsuits come out. Walgreens and all these pharmacies and stuff now will come up on lawsuits. A lot of big corporations are filing for bankruptcy so they can avoid penalties involving the opioids. You know, you have documentaries come out naming 1 or 2 families, but this is far bigger than 1 or 2 families, Mr. Nelson. But when it comes to shutting down the government, many people plead guilty to a lesser crime. Most defense attorneys, they don't even go to court. It's like that movie, A Few Good Men. Tom Cruise he goes, wow, this is what the inside of a courtroom looks like. Because all they do is plea bargain. Because they know most of us are living paycheck to paycheck, can't afford the money for a good attorney. And they've been scared to death by saying, well, you know, if you go to court and you're found guilty, you're going to do 25 years. So plea down to something that's a lot less, and you'll only do a couple years. So a lot of times people plead guilty to stuff they're not even guilty of, Mr. Nelson, out of fear. So I'm not saying that the brothers theory wouldn't work. I'm just saying in reality, I don't see it happening.
All right. 14 after the top of the hour, 800-450-7876. Kiki's in Iowa on line 5. Kiki, a question for Mark?
Shut them down. Shut them down.
Yes. Good morning, you guys. Hey, Mark. First of all,
Stop. Okay, I want you folks to know something, okay? Kiki calls in all unassuming. I'm just going to tell you folks something. Kiki is one of the most intelligent individuals whom I've had the pleasure of communicating with in the last 10 years. So what you got for me today, sister?
Well, I found it very interesting after I wrote you about Nancy Pelosi's Taiwan visit. China went and sanctioned her and her businesses, and I said, and everybody, nobody paid attention to that. And I said, why they would only sanction her business if she had dealings in China. And I said, wow, what a conflict of interest. That's definitely a distraction. But so thank you for saying that, because I quickly said, okay, yeah, that's a distraction. They really are taxing her businesses now, which I found that to be very, very highly interesting. But
now, having said what you just said, okay, everybody's concerned about us going to war, the new Cold Wars with China and Russia, right? Now, I've been coming on this show for more than 6 years telling people about BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
How many
Their goal
times I said
is to
that?
replace the U.S. dollar as the #1 currency. That is not going to happen without a world war. For you folks don't know, we got 2 permanent Marine Corps bases in Australia. Why? Australia is Asia, folks. It's funny because I even have people from Australia talk about the invasion of Asians in their country because they're so dumb. They don't even know Australia is Asia. See, we used to have ANZUS. That used to be Australia, New Zealand, United States, and that went out years ago. But now we're trying to reestablish that. We're headed for a world war, folks. We're headed for a world war. So when Kiki mentions China, allow me just to refresh your memories, folks.
I tell you what, hold that thought right there, Mark, because we got to take a short break here. We got to check the traffic and weather together. Kiki, stay with us, of course. 800-450-7876 to speak to Mark from Anaheim. Your calls in 4 minutes on 1010 WLB in Baltimore. In the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Hold on real fast. Let me hit this.
Beto O'Rourke from Texas is going to run. Look at how he got applauded there. They tell the motherfucker to shut the fuck up. Because he heckled them during a town hall meeting. We got him, we got Newsom, we got Buttigieg, we got AOC. We got a lot of people that can run. Bernie can run again. So what the fuck? Who's the right have? DeSantis and Trump. Trump's going to get a felony for taking top secret information to give it to the Saudis.
I don't know what he did. But he got a whole lot more information than that. You have to rewind this and see that he's still running shit. He don't even have to be president. He can just run shit. He's just like the glamour. And that's no bullshit. As well, Serenity was here. She been here the whole time. If you missed it, you have to rewind this or just hit that link and look for Mark from Anaheim. They also got Freeway Ricky Ross, was August the 9th. I'm going to go back and listen to that one. But yeah. Let's keep going.
Good morning again, family. Thanks for rolling with us, by the way. 23 minutes after the top of the hour with our guest, Mark from Anaheim. And I keep telling Mark's not his real name. It's not really from Anaheim. And those of you who want to hear more, he'll give you his information before he leaves. But before we left, we're speaking with Kiki in Iowa. So, Mark, I'm going to let you finish your thought.
So Kiki brings up China, okay? And before the break, I was mentioning Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, BRICS. They want to replace the U.S. dollar as the number one currency. So, Mr. Nelson, Kiki, China, who owns more of the U.S. debt than any other country?
China.
All right. What do you say, Mr. Nelson?
Same thing.
All right. So, folks, if China was to cash in on the U.S. debt,
what y'all didn't peep though is how he said that Nancy Pelosi got sanctions from her Chinese businesses, so she cashing out on them. Y'all see how this work? She cashing out on our debt with China. Now they sanctioning her. They're taxing her. Oh, this shit is dope, ain't it?
Right now, what would that do to our economy? So back in the Gulf War, I went to a meeting where the ambassador from Kuwait was here in the U.S. And there was a Los Angeles Times news reporter in the room. He's like, well, Kuwait is a monarchy. Why is the U.S. supporting them? They're not a democracy. And the ambassador said, you silly American. If you hadn't supported us in the Gulf War, we would simply pull our money out of your banks and your stock market would collapse in less than a week. Nobody else in the room asked a question. By the way, folks, you don't know this. That ambassador, it was his daughter who told the lies about the incubators. His daughter was never a nurse in Kuwait, and she never saw any incubators where the babies were taken out of incubators, because that's what Daddy Bush used to get us into that war. Now, I say that to you, Mr. Nelson. I say that to you, Kiki, because just like that ambassador was saying, pulling their money out of the banks would cause the stock market to collapse. If China started cashing on the debts that the U.S. is now indebted to China, what would happen to our stock market? However, you both are incorrect. The number one owner of U.S. debt, folks, listen to what I'm telling you, is Japan, not China. And most people don't even have a clue. Now, I'm warning you, folks. See, I pay attention. When the Olympics happened in 2021, because Mr. Nelson will tell you, I told folks in 2016 there would be no Olympics in 2020. I had a lot of surfers mad at me for that one, because that was the first year that surfing was in the Olympics. And I told them not only would there be no surfing, there would be no Olympics in 2020. We had the Olympics last year. You folks may not have been paying attention, but
Somebody
I was.
laughed at me. They laughed at me.
And that Olympics, people were flying for the first time since World War II, the imperial flag of Japan. The flag for Japan is just a red circle on a white flag. The imperial flag is a red circle with red lines going in all different directions because they want to control the world. Now, why am I telling you this? If you're not aware of this, Japan is buying up all of our old nuclear power plants. And what can you make from depleted uranium?
Oh, no.
So this is what happens. Hey, there it is. In fact, Mr. Nutt, that's the only reason why we have nuclear power plants. It ain't about power. In fact, nuclear power plants are so dangerous. There's not one insurance company on the planet that insures a nuclear power plant. They don't care because if anything goes wrong, the taxpayers have to pick up the tab. So anybody who tells you that nuclear power is safe, ask them just one question. Then why won't any insurance company insure a nuclear power plant? Right now, as I'm talking to you, and something I've already mentioned on the show before it even happened, I told you folks about Chernobyl. I told you about those decaying nuclear power plants in Ukraine. Because if Russia was really the bad guys everybody claims they are, they could cause a mushroom cloud into Europe that would wipe them out in a matter of days with chemical from all those nuclear power plants that are over there decaying and dying. In fact, that's what helped cause the Soviet Union collapse was Chernobyl. That was the greatest nuclear meltdown. And for you folks who live in California, by the way, the biggest nuclear meltdown in U.S. history was right here in Moore Park, California. And most folks don't even know it. So what I'm telling you is, I'll just break it down for you. Number 1 is Japan. Number 2 is China. Number 3 is the UK. Number 4 is Ireland. And number 5 is Luxembourg. Those are the people who control the U.S. debt. And those are the folks who decide what goes on in this country. That's why they have the power for the lobbyists. They run the country, follow the money. But thanks to the Supreme Court, while you folks were distracted with a black female smoking dope and couldn't go to the Olympics, while you folks were distracted with Bill Cosby getting out of prison, the Supreme Court basically passed 2 laws. One, they basically nullified the Voting Rights Act. And number 2, it's much more difficult now to follow the money. So there'll be a lot more dark money in this coming election and all the elections in the future because now these politicians don't even have to tell you where they're getting their money from. And that money could be coming from an outside source. When I say outside the United States. But I'm sorry, Kiki, did you have a question?
Yes, and wow, I didn't even know about that with Japan. I got some homework to do. Thank you for that. So my question for you is, with the whole thing with Brittany Griner, I don't know why that is, because I know we have individuals here that are incarcerated wrongfully, so we should be also paying attention to that as well. But what I just can't wrap my head around is that Edward Snowden, and I wrote you this a couple of days ago, Edward Snowden is actually trying to get back into the United States and reestablish his citizenship after all he did. What he did was treason, and he should be in prison for that. And he's kicked, he's sitting back, kicked his feet up, swimming in more money than he could after he sold our secrets to both China and Russia on the things that he was working on for the United States. And he will never see the inside of a prison cell, but Brittany Griner is inside of a prison cell and possibly given 9 years. I'm not sure if she will have to serve that in full term and everything. What are your thoughts about that? And do you think that she's worth two people to exchange, one of them being a big time arms dealer from Russia?
Yeah, interesting because I didn't post it, and now it's going to look like, I'm doing it after the fact. But I had just done a little write-up on that arms dealer because there's a movie that came out years ago with Nicolas Cage, where Nicolas Cage is like an arms dealer. And that movie is very realistic. Now, there's certain things in the movie that Hollywood did, what you would consider artistic license with. But go back and watch the movie with Nicolas Cage, and the movie, the title, I'll find it before we go to the next break. But Nicolas Cage was in a movie that talks about arms dealers. And one of the arms dealers that were involved in that movie that they don't say by name is one of the guys that Brittany's not going to spend 9 years in prison in Russia. She will be used for an exchange. And most of that is hype also. I mean, that's a distraction. That's a distraction. It upsets black folks. It upsets feminists. It upsets the LGBTQ community. And it's about nothing. No, seriously, it's about nothing. But they will use that as a high-profile exchange, and she'll be coming home in exchange for one who's a really bad guy, really bad guy. So I don't really spend much time thinking about that case because I just tell folks, go back and watch the movie. We had a movie that came out back in the 70s, really, where a guy went to Turkey and tried to smuggle hashish out. So, you folks go to other countries, follow the rules. So I don't really have much sympathy for her either. I mean, that might sound cold. You're in their country, follow the rules. She knew what she was doing when she did that.
Write that down.
She knew what the rules are. That's not her first trip to Russia. It's just at this time these guys decided to bust her. And as far as Snowden goes, Mr. Nelson, I know I shouldn't have said this, but I came on your show and said if I saw Assange or Snowden walking down the street, I'd shoot him on sight. So I don't have any sympathy for Snowden or Assange. But I will say, since Kiki did bring up Snowden, Assange is another reason, going back to Anthony's question, why a lot of your progressives who voted Democratic, they're very angry with Biden right now because Biden administration is trying to prosecute Assange here in the United States. And if that happens, then he probably will assure that the Republicans will take over the House because the progressives aren't going to vote Republican. They're just going to sit home and not vote at all.
All right. 28 away from the top of the hour. Patricia says the movie you're looking for is Lord of War with Nick Cage.
Lord of War. Oh, yeah. Folks, watch that movie. It talks about my boy Ollie North in that movie and other people, but it also shows how some of us who wore a uniform tried to do the right thing. Mr. Nelson, I wish, I haven't talked to him in years. I know you haven't either. Remember Michael Levine?
Yes.
Michael Levine and I had very similar backgrounds, and I used to love it when he came on your show, Mr. Nelson, because he and I would drop knowledge and people, all the stuff about Ricky Ross and everything, and, they got movies like Narcos now. Mr. Nelson, you could attest. Michael Levine and I were telling you guys stories like that long before these Hollywood movies and Netflix came out with Narcos and all that stuff. Because we know what it's like to go after major drug dealers and have somebody tell you that they got a get out of jail free card. And Michael Levine was DEA, and Michael and I would come on this show, and at the time he didn't know who I was either, because sometimes he goes, "Are you on the job?" Because he's from New York, and sadly his son was murdered in New York. But Michael said that he doesn't believe it was because of his going after the major drug cartels. But Michael will tell you how we would have major players that we go after. Now, I was a technical advisor. I helped Larry Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum for the movie Deep Cover. Because that's a classic movie where Larry Fishburne ends up saying, "Here, I thought I was a cop pretending to be a drug dealer. I'm just a drug dealer pretending to be a cop." And I know we got a break, so I'll come back on the other side with that.
All right, 26 away from the top of the hour. Speak to Mark from Anaheim. We take your calls in 4 minutes on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore, and the DMV on FM 95.9 and 1450 WOL, where information is power. Good morning once again, family. Thanks for rolling with us, especially
What's up, B?
Wake Up Squad who's joined us at 6 o'clock in the morning. Just want to remind you that we're going to start tomorrow at 6. We're going to have our open phone full. And hit us up. If you're in Baltimore, we're on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. We're speaking with Mark from Anaheim. So, Mark, I'll let you finish your thought. And by the way, a couple of tweets. So, the movie we were thinking about was Midnight Express.
That's correct, Midnight. So, before we finish here, you alluded earlier. So, for the listeners out there who may not have gotten their questions in, you can contact me at Facebook. I'm on both a group site as well as a fan page site called Mark from Anaheim. Political Sarcasm 101. Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101. And I will take the time to answer each and every one of your questions, unless it's something that I can't discuss, and I'll tell you that. The movies I recommended so far on this radio show today, 1 was Deep Cover, 2, Lord of War, and 3, Midnight Express. Midnight Express is a classic. And that's a true story, by the way, Midnight Express. As far as I heard a commercial talking about a certain CIA guy who passed away. Yeah, well, a lot of the stuff written about Gary Schroen ain't exactly accurate, but, that's how it rolls. I only wish that people, if you want to see a movie that's more accurate about Afghanistan or going after bin Laden and all that stuff, go back and see Charlie Wilson's War. Charlie Wilson's the unsung hero, and I'm sure he'd be rolling over in his grave today if he saw what was going on with us in Afghanistan. But to finish up with Kiki, really, Mr. Nuss, I had already answered her question.
All right, let's keep moving because we got a bunch of folks got questions for you. 800-450-7876. Smitty's calling from Baltimore. He's on line 2. Smitty, you have a question for Mark?
Yeah, can you hear me call? Yeah, Mr. Mark, I want to thank you for the enlightenment. One of the things I think that the general public is being bamboozled because when they done the raid on the Trump Mar-a-Lago place, usually wherever you have a place that your name is under or a place that you frequent, when they do a raid, they do all the places that they think that they can get information from wherever you're being at. So
you mean like when they do a drug raid on the Crips or Bloods and they hit them all at the same time?
That is correct. That is correct. So all I see is a bunch of bamboozle going on. I think, and some of the things that you brought out in reference to the information that Trump has by owning casinos, and also the invitement of them being able to come down and enjoy the social good gathering that he has with younger women. I see this case going nowhere.
Well, not only that, brother, you have to remember, too, at Mar-a-Lago, FBI had to notify them that they were coming so they didn't get shot. Hey, we're going to be coming down to serve a warrant. All right, thanks for the warning, buddy.
Yeah, that's right. Secret Service knew they were coming. They told him.
The same Secret Service that can delete their emails and don't get in trouble for it because Biden hasn't replaced the guy who's in charge of Homeland Security. Because see, that's something else that George W. Bush did. He placed Coast Guard and Secret Service under Homeland Security.
Yeah, I see. So the chain is being pulled. It's like the dog when you have a choke chain on him. Well, every time you try to growl somebody, keep them from biting you, tighten up on the chain.
Mr. Nelson, Smitty's on top of this.
Yes, he is. Thanks, Smitty. We're going to keep rolling there because we've got a bunch of folks want to talk to Mark. 800-450-7876. Brother Carlos is calling from Waldorf. Brother Carlos, you have a question for Mark?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I wanted to piggyback real quick on comments you made to Michelle about the Jalen Walker case and the perception that Black people are being shot in an overkill fashion. And I'm going back to Amadou Diallo. I'm going back to Jacob Blake. I'm going back to many cases where, in fact, we even had a case in Baltimore where a police officer was shot who was guarding a club multiple times, like overkill. And are you saying that there is not a double perception or double standard there when police are engaged with Black people as far as them overkilling or shooting Black people in an uncanny fashion? I mean, is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is this, okay? One, cops are humans. Problem with law enforcement, instead of admitting that they made a mistake, they ramp down to try to protect themselves instead of just coming out and saying we screwed up. Cops make mistakes, they're humans. But if folks really look at the facts, okay? Just look at the facts. I can point out just as many white folks in this country who have been shot and killed by the cops. I'll give you a good example. We got the real bad fires right now in California. I guarantee you there's nobody listening to this show right now know about a Hmong. Hmong, when I say Hmong, H-M-O-N-G, those are people we brought here after the Vietnam War for the things they did for us in Cambodia and Laos and places we weren't supposed to be. Well, Hmongs are very powerful, influential in like Minneapolis or the Twin Cities, but they're also up in the San Jose area. Well, some of those Hmongs cultivate illegal marijuana in these forests. So when we had the major forest fires last year, you guys didn't hear about this Hmong that got shot like 40 times. Have you ever heard about the Hmong that got shot 40 times? Hello?
I think he's gone. I think he hung up. Well, go ahead.
But what I'm just saying is white folks get shot in this country every day too, Mr. Nelson. The media will pick out the articles that will elicit a certain response. Just like I told you about the white girl who spent 2 weeks in jail here in LA on a warrant that wasn't hers. Had she been black, you would know about that because that's what could be used to manipulate, to foster, foment hatred and anger. Mr. Nelson, you know what better than anybody else. I stopped doing shows with you after the Patriot Act. I came back with you because of the murder of Trayvon Martin, because that was the first one where I saw a deliberate attempt to foment hatred and anger in this country so that most people would start hating the cops and more people would start making everything about black and white. And since the Trayvon Martin, it's been nonstop. We will not even know how many white people got shot and killed this week by cops because that does not make in the news. Not, you know, it probably would maybe if a black guy did it. But see, since most black cops don't do that kind of stuff, it's not going to happen. But no, seriously, it's selective. Am I saying that there aren't some bigoted cops out there? Trust me, I left LAPD because of bigotry. So, I mean, you're singing to the choir there, okay? But I can tell you this, those white cops are bigots and get away with it because you got black cops in the department who facilitate it. They're more loyal to their little Masonic orders that they're members of than they are the community. Even in North Charleston, South Carolina, I'm from Charleston. In North Charleston, when this white guy shot and killed a guy and lied about it, it was a black guy who did the reports and covered it up for him. Now, you don't even know that black guy's name. The white guy went to prison. The black guy, he's working as a cop in another city now. So trust me, folks, I could play the game all day here about white cops hate black people. Get off of it. Cops are cops. People, unfortunately, most people don't know the law. They do silly things. Cops overreact, and it has nothing to do with the ethnicity. But when it happens to be a white cop and a black victim, that sells newspapers, that boosts the ratings, and that stirs the pot. And you allow yourself to be manipulated, and you fall for it. I hope that answers the question.
All right, we keep moving. 11 away from the top of the hour. Let's go to Baltimore. Mark's waiting for us on line 3. Mark, your question for Mark.
Hey, how y'all doing? So your real name's not Mark from Anaheim, huh?
My name is Michael Parler. Does it really matter?
No, I'm just glad that you chose that name.
It's a good name, ain't it?
That's all. Yeah, I'm just glad because you're brilliant. You make me feel a little smarter. My name Mark. Yeah.
You are smarter because you're listening to this show. Obviously, if you're listening to this show, that tells you right there you're not normal. Because sadly, most people who should be listening, not because of me coming on the show, but Mr. Nelson brings on people that nobody else will bring on. So, brother, kudos to you before you even talk to me. The fact that you're even listening to this show, and I thank Kathy Hughes for this show. Brother, you're already smart.
Thank you, Mark. But seriously, though, man, here in Baltimore, we have less than 500,000 people, Mark, and I'm glad you said everything you said. Do you know Dr. Tyrone Powers, former FBI agent, and
I'm very familiar with some because he's written books. He's written a few books.
Absolutely. And here in Baltimore, you know, the nutshell, because I'm glad you do. Here in Baltimore, we have less than 600,000 people. We have 200 plus murders here now. Right now, we have 200 plus murders here. We just had an 8-year-old murdered. They arrested a juvenile. We just had a 15-year-old murdered by a 9-year-old that had a gun. You know, but the last 8 years, going on 8 years.
Mark, do us a favor. Put in a question for him. We got a bunch of folks and we're racing the clock. So put in a question so Mark can respond.
This is my question. Dr. Tyrone Powers, he said this. He said in Baltimore, he said the criminals are more organized in their chaos than our leadership. He said that our leadership is thin-skinned. He said that the city council's grandstanding for mayor, and nobody's on the same page. And that's why we got what we got, the lawlessness here in Baltimore. So, you know, what do you suggest that we could do in Baltimore to get everybody on the same page? Because our law enforcement officers say they don't feel supported. You know, and just everybody's all over.
All right, let's give him a chance to respond, Mark, because we're racing the clock. I thank you for your question. We got the question.
Okay.
Mark?
Sadly, this is not confined to Baltimore. Remember I said earlier that morale is very low in law enforcement? There is a deliberate attempt to privatize all government agencies. To accomplish that, you have to get the citizens to feel as if the cops are incompetent, that the cops are racist, that the cops are killers, that the cops are bigots. And then you'll demand such things as defund the police. But what do you replace them with? Just like in the schools, a lot of the stuff going on with the mass shootings in the school, what's going to be the response? Now you're going to hire private security to come in because the local law enforcement, they don't have the personnel to staff every school in your city. See, a lot of these guys, when they retire, they have no jobs. So you always see this increase in reporting of crime, but it gets a little deeper than that. Because of COVID, a lot of people have lost their jobs and have lost their minds. Crime is going to go up. I mean, nobody's talking about the impact that COVID's had on crime, but Mr. Nelson, when it comes to Baltimore, Baltimore's not unique. All city officials have issues, just like on the D.C. level. There's corruption everywhere. That's why I left law enforcement. That's why I went back to surfing. I got tired of trying to fight it. And before I ended up dead by somebody who looked the same way I did in uniform, I decided to go back to surfing. I'm not saying that it's an unwinnable, untenable situation. What I'm saying is until you folks root out the corruption, nothing is going to change. And as long as you have so-called police unions that aren't even unions that can give money to district attorneys, and district attorneys are the ones who investigate cops involved in shootings. If you want to talk about a conflict of interest, that's your biggest conflict of interest. No police union or pseudo-union, because LAPD doesn't even have a union. Protective League is not actually a union. Why are these people allowed to give financial donations to somebody running for office as a district attorney? They shouldn't be allowed to give money to any person running for office. So as long as you have that going on, Mr. Nelson and Mark, I don't see much changing. So I hope that helps to answer this question.
All right, 6 away. Can we take another call?
Oh, I know that last answer is going to cause some people some problems.
Oh, yeah. Kevin, can we take another call? All right, let's go. Anita in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Can you make it real quick?
I need a fix because I'm going down.
Real quick.
Hi. Okay, I got kind of two questions. Thank you for letting us know about Japan because Rahm Emanuel just went to Japan. And Japan was killed, Laquan McDonald, Rahm Emanuel, something, okay? And we was wondering why that happened and why he went to Japan. Okay, plus all his history here. And then another thing
is... Anita, can you get to the question?
Government right now.
Okay, that was
I hate to push you like this, but we're running the clock.
And the other question is, real quickly, is I noticed people that's in their 70s, like over 73, went to college. And we haven't had enough money for people to pay for housing for people with families. Okay, and these people are going to college. So you're talking about the people maybe not paying their mortgages, even though you didn't suggest they do it. I think that has something to do with it, that women are not having children, and we've redefined family so that people could afford a family. Same-sex marriage or single living or contraceptives, abortion.
All right, I don't know if the question's in there, but we're closing in on the end of the show.
I'll just say this about women. Women in this country have never been respected. That's why I coach female surfers. I coach women who get no sponsors, get no love, get no support. You don't even have an equal rights amendment in this country. Even a white woman couldn't have a credit card till 1975. So contact me at Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101, and I'll try to answer your questions because I know we're running out of time.
All right, we're flat out of time. Thanks, Mark. Folks, we got to get out of here. Please stay strong, stay positive, stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, right here on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore. In the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Yeah. Thank you for rocking with me, Serenity. And I don't know who over here on YouTube, but I got to go. It's Friday night. I just want to give up some game. So, and also the show. where you can go. I do a whole lot of listening. A whole lot of listening. I got plenty of time. But I holler.